why do people put on weight? What's happening? There's an imbalance there somewhere.
It's a mass balance exercise. So there are many different ways in which I could change the weight of my body. Weight is the force exerted on a weighing scale, for example, by the mass of the body under the influence of the curvature of space-time that we think of as gravity. Okay. Gravity is a pseudo force. It's not actually a force, it's actually curvature in space-time. And that's what causes it to occur. Nonetheless, to all intents and purposes in everyday life, it can be thought of as a force because it acts exactly as a force, although it's not one. It's for another day. Don't get tangled up over that one so much. Anyway, the weight of my body is made up as follows. Some water, mostly water, in fact, because it's 65% or so water is my body. Some protein, most of the rest of that 35% that's remaining, in my case, because I've got very little stored body fat. There is some stored body fat on my body, and some people's bodies have more than others, absolutely. Then there's the weight of my skeleton as a discrete thing, my viscera, my organs, all of that stuff, etc. So they're all components, if you like to think of them that way, that are all independently moderatable, some quickly, some less quickly. And if I change all the different components of the weights that make up my total mass, that will have probably some effect on my total mass, unless they're all balanced out, in which case there'll be no effect, right? For example, I could put on 1 kilogram of lean muscle mass, take off 1 kilogram of fat off my body, and that has had no effect on my weight. So I might think, well, that was a waste of time and effort. Then I've achieved nothing. Well, it depends. Was my goal to weigh less on a scale, or was it to improve my body composition? Because I certainly did that. Here's another example. If I want to lose up to 0.5 kilogram within less than a minute, here's what I can do. I can go urinate. That'll do it. Water is not only the most abundant part of my weight, it's also the heaviest by volume of stuff, because water is very heavy. I could dehydrate myself over several hours. I could go and sit in a sauna. That would change my weight. I could surgically remove all my limbs. That would change my weight rapidly, quite a bit. Is that a good idea? No, I'm not suggesting it is, but I could do that. What we need to get out of our heads is this idea that our weight on a scale is important. What's important is how your body is composed. The relative amount that is protein, water, fat, skeleton, viscera, that's what's important here. Those are the things that are moderatable by moderating your diet appropriately and your exercise appropriately, basically. That's the thing that these idiots refer to as calories in, calories out. It's got nothing whatever to do with calories. It's mass balance.
So you did mention earlier on about changing each of the components, which we can do, right? We can change the water component by dehydrating ourselves, for example. How do we, I'm interested to know how one can change their skeletal mass, like bone density.
Excellent question.
Is that the same thing? Bone density and skeletal mass are the same thing?
There is a thing called, there is a thing called Wolff's Law, WOLFF, Wolff's Law. And it says that a skeleton that is subjected to X number of impacts per day will increase its density, in order to become more robust, in order to withstand impacts. So if I go outside to the shed, I've got a sandbag hanging out there that I train with sometimes, and I take a long bone, any long bone I like, let's say my humerus, and I 12 impacts a day at reasonable force is enough to stimulate Wolff's Law, and that actually makes my bones denser, stronger, harder. There is more bone material and less space after Wolff's Law. those tissues react to that challenge, that training. So my skeleton would become heavier. So that's one way I could do that. Here's another way I could change the density of my skeleton. The inverse. I could become completely sedentary, and then my bones would start to dissolve slowly over years. Because people often don't think of their skeleton as a living, breathing organ. It absolutely is, and it absolutely can. I mean, how do you think bones repair themselves when you break a bone? They're living, breathing organs with a blood supply, and they absolutely can and do change their size, their shape, their density, and their weight.